Hey everybody, I am responding to Kayla's video, which was a response to the YouTube video, The Rise of Personal Robots by Cynthia Breazeal. First, I will again summarize the three main points brought up by Breazeal, and then I will touch on a few important points that Kayla laid out, and finally I will relate to the video to more recent articles. As Kayla mentioned, ever since Cynthia Breazeal was a child, she had always wondered why robots were used by NASA but not in the home. She figured out that the main reason was because robots were being created to interact with things rather than people. To change this, Breazeal was determined to create a robot that was able to socially interact with humans. Kisbet was the first robot created that was able to interact and understand what a person was telling it, a lot like a nonverbal child or pre-verbal child, and even though it was obvious it understood, it was hard for it to talk. Another robot that she showed a video of was Leo, and even though it didn't talk, you could tell that the robot was understanding what the person was telling it. And I felt this point related a lot to Lynn Spiegel's article about smart homes when she talked about the smart home being gendered. And she mentioned how the smart home was taking kind of the role of the mom and, doing things that a mother would take, and by that it was becoming gendered. And I felt like this related to the robots in the sense that, Kisbet, Leo, they have names just like humans have. And also later in the video, Breazeal said that people felt more connected to the robot, and they even dressed the robot and put the robot in buckled up when they went, and they even told it bye, knowing that it couldn't respond, but they still treated it like a human. And I felt like that really related to Spiegel's idea of becoming genderized, and I felt like the robots definitely were. The three main ideas that Breazeal discussed were the use of robots in communication, health, and media. In relation to communication, Breazeal believed that the robots can create a more interactive environment for people to communicate with them. She used the example about her mother wanting to interact with her grandchildren more, and through the use of this interactive robot, she was able to play with them and even read them stories before bed, just like she would do if she was in person. And this interactive robot, showed a picture of it in the video. It has arms and legs, and it can use nonverbal cues that you can't get on Skype or Skype on your phone, and it actually moves and interacts just like a person would if you were there. And Kayla in her video related this to the Slack and Wise article about convenience, in the idea that the robots are shifting from a want to a need. And I definitely feel like this is goes along with the aspect of using robots within communication, in the sense that, if we're able to feel like we're in the same room with somebody when they're actually across the world, people are going to see, well, I have to have this because, I have to interact. Just kind of like the computer and the phone went from a want to a need. Now it's like if these robots take off, they are going to become a need, because, if we have this ability to interact just like we are in person, everybody's going to want this, and in turn, it's going to turn into a need. And I thought that was a good point that Kayla laid out in her response to the video. The next thing that Breazeal mentioned was robots in relation to health, and she believed that the MiaBot could be used as a diet and exercise coach. To test her MiaBot, she conducted a study to see the long-term success of a diet when recording your diet and exercise either to a robot, a computer, or just on a pad and piece of paper and pen. So basically, in the results, she wanted to see what a person, which one would have a long-term success in their diet. And she proved that the robot had, when recording their diet and exercise to the robot, they had a more long-term success of the diet. And she believed this was because, they could feel interaction with this robot. Instead of, just putting it into a computer or writing down a pad of paper, the computer actually kind of interacted with you, and it made it feel more of a connection like a person would, which helped with the long-term success of the diet. She also talked about in relation to media with the use of robots, and she thought that robots could be used in a way to allow children to interact with the virtual world when playing a game. And in the video, it showed a big projection of, like, a field and or like something like that, and the kid was actually, the object came out of the wall and it was kind of virtual, but they could put it back in the wall and they could play with it, and it's kind of like they were in the virtual world. She thought this would be a great way to let the children feel more interaction with their games. And Kayla brought up very relatable points to these two aspects to the Psychomods article on convenience. These personal robots definitely represent convenience, as Kayla mentioned, in the sense that they conquer space and save time. And now it's more convenient to communicate with our relatives across the world and feel more connected. Now we don't have to manage our diet because our personal robot can, which is more convenient. And now kids can feel more involved in their games in the virtual world while still having the physical exercises, not even being outside, which is also more convenient. But my question is this going too far? And I feel like this is the main concern for people who oppose this new technology inventions. As Spingle mentioned again in her article about smart homes, she says intelligent agents become more lifelike while humans become more thing-like. And as Breazeal mentioned at the beginning of her article, or the video, the problem with robots were that they were designed to interact with things rather than humans. But my question is, in the process of creating these robots to socially interact with humans, have we created a technology that's more lifelike while we're becoming more thing-like? And I think one could argue this in some aspects of the robot in health and media. For instance, do we really need a personal robot to track our diet and tell us how to exercise? Isn't this kind of like a free will that we have as humans by deciding things, and why should we have to listen to this robot? Also, in relation to the robot in the gaming media, if children are now interacting with games and still get the physical exercise, there's not much need to go outside and play with your friends because, you're connected to the virtual world and still get physical exercise. And I just feel like this could take away from, the true soul of being a kid. And I feel like that's one of the most important aspects of growing up as a child, the ability to go outside and play with your friends and get fresh air. And I feel like that could go away if we can just interact with the video games. My next point that kind of relates to some more recent articles, I think a valid point about robots is, relating them to the I Spy article, Surveillance and Power in the Interactive Era. And this article talks about privacy issues on the internet and how digital footprints can leave tracks of information about yourself. And I know that Breazeal really doesn't want to use the robots as in this sort of aspect, but really, do we really know where this information that we give these robots is going? When we tell them our diet and exercise, and we talk to them, through them with people from across the world, and if we start depending on these robots for everything, is this going to create privacy issues? And, really, where is this information going? And I think this is a valid point that somebody should think about. If, these robots begin to take off and become a success like, Breazeal hopes they will, I think this is an issue that, needs to be, touched on. Another connection I felt that this article made was through the Berman's piece about coming to our senses. And in one of the pages of the article, it talked about how these babies from another country were held for the first time, mainly the first 2 years of their life. And it was talking about the idea of this touch sensation and of feeling loved. And we also talked about this in class in relation to the Facebook video by Corey, and he talked a lot about, this idea of, this touch factor, and Facebook is kind of putting us away from that. And I felt like it also related to Breazeal's idea of the robots, because, if we're using these robots and we feel this connection to them, I think that's why she felt like there would be a success. But then again, if you think about it, these robots really aren't human. So they're really not going to be able to, touch and, feel the love that you get from, your mom or your dad. And I feel like this could somehow, take away from the relationships we have in our lives, And if children are now just playing in the virtual world, they're not wanting this interaction with friends and things. And I think that's an issue that these robots could have. And also in relation to the diet, Mia Breazeal that said that they felt more they trusted the robot more with their diet and exercise because they were able to interact and they felt this like sensation of interaction. And I feel like these relate to Berman's article and Corey Anton's idea of the touch and how it's so important to feel this feeling of being loved and things like that. But then I think it also could take it a step too far if we're getting this it's kind of like non-human love. It's like it's a robot, and it's really not a human. And I think this also relates back to Spiegel's idea about being gendered, making these robots gendered, and also intelligent agents become more lifelike while we're becoming more thing-like. And I think we just need to make sure that we're not stepping across the line on these robots and making sure that they're not now going to replace humans, but rather become an aid for humans. And I think that's the idea that I had with this. Like, I think that it's a great idea used in communication, health, and even gaming. But I think we need to make sure that this doesn't cross over the line and replace the human abilities and just what humans do.